Ever tried answering immigration questions after 12 hours in the air and almost no sleep? One shaky answer in that state is all it takes to turn a simple stamp into a 30-minute grilling in a side room. Your head's foggy, your legs are half asleep, and suddenly there's a bright immigration hall and an officer waiting to grill you. In that state, even frequent flyers mess up. And on the other side of the counter, that tiny wobble can be all it takes for an officer to start digging deeper. In this video, we'll break down the 13 most common questions immigration and customs officers use to quietly test your story and how to answer each one naturally, confidently, and without raising an eyebrow. Before we get into the actual questions, quick reset because travelers mix these two up all the time. Immigration is about you, your passport, your visa, why you're entering, and how long you're staying. Customs is about your stuff, food, medicine, cash, electronics, luxury items. 2 different stops, 2 different rule books. And there's one more twist. Some countries run this whole process on hard mode. Outside America, the UK and Australia are especially famous for how intense their questioning can get, how personal it feels, and how fast they zoom in on tiny details. How does that sound in real life? You'll hear it as we go through each question. Wherever you land, Los Angeles, London, Sydney, the logic behind the interview is almost the same. Once you understand what they're really testing, you'll move through that line like someone who knows the game, not someone hoping it all works out. Let's start with the first simple sentence that quietly kicks off the whole interview. On paper, it's the easiest question in the world. An officer looks up and says, "Can I see your passport?" You hand it over and think nothing of it. But that's actually the moment the real interview quietly starts. They're not just checking a document, they're checking you how prepared you look, how quickly you respond, whether you seem like someone who has their trip under control or someone already in over their head. This is why your passport should never be a scavenger hunt. By the time you reach the front of the line, it should already be in your hand, open to the photo page, ready to go. No digging in backpacks, no patting every pocket trying to remember where you put it. This is where a small travel wallet pays off. Think of something about 4 by 6 inches, big enough for your passport, ID, a couple of credit cards, your boarding pass, baggage claim tags, and a pen. That's it. Nothing fancy? During the trip, that wallet lives in a zipped outer pocket of your personal bag so you can grab it in one motion. When the officer says, "Passport, please," a quick "sure" or "here you go" is enough. It sends a simple signal. This traveler planned ahead. The way you handle this tiny moment sets the pace for everything that comes next. A clean, simple handoff calms your nerves because the next question is where they really start testing your story. This sounds like small talk, but it's not. When an officer asks, "Where are you flying in from?" they're mapping your route in their head and checking whether it makes sense. They're listening for 2 things. Does your answer fit your ticket? And does your route pass through any extra attention zones, places with recent health outbreaks, conflict, or countries known for high overstay rates? Where people get themselves into trouble is when they start telling the whole saga. "Well, I was in Thailand for a bit, then I stayed with friends in Germany, and before that I went home for a few weeks, but originally I left." By the 3rd comma, the officer is no longer following the story, now they're wondering what you're trying to hide, even if you're not hiding anything at all. You're not there to retell your entire travel diary, you're there to give one clear line that matches your trip. Something like, "I flew in from Atlanta with a connection in Paris." That's enough. Starting point plus obvious layover. Keep it short, keep it consistent, and this one is over in seconds. Have you ever seen an officer frown and ask you to repeat where you flew in from? That tiny moment often sets up what they ask next, especially when they get to the topic that makes everyone a little nervous: how long you're staying. If there's one line that can turn a simple stamp into a full-on interrogation, it's this one. How long are you staying? To you, it's just a date. To them, it's a test. Do your plans sound clear, limited, and legal, or fuzzy and open-ended? People who really intend to leave on time usually answer in a clean, specific way. People who haven't thought it through tend to wobble, like my friend Maria. She arrived in the UK from another European country with her kids, planning to stay in a relative's home while she waited on a residency visa for somewhere else. When they asked how long she'd stay, she answered honestly, "I'm not really sure." They pulled her aside, made her prove she had plenty of money in her US bank account, and lectured her about not living off the UK or using the NHS. She did get in eventually, but she never forgot how humiliating it felt, all because of one naive answer at the desk. That's just one example, but it shows how much stricter places like the UK can be on this question. The fix isn't complicated. Your answer needs to sound like a trip, not a new life. Think along the lines of 10 days or 1 week for vacation. And if your trip is split across cities, you can still keep it tight. 3 nights total, 1 in Milan, then 2 in Zurich by train. No extra unless I decide to stay longer or unless my friend invites me to stay. That one little add-on can turn into a longer chat, extra checks, or even a side room you really didn't budget time for. But why does it feel so intense now? Let me explain quickly because it has everything to do with how much data they see on their screens. In the US, your entries and exits are logged. In Europe, the new entry/exit system does the same for the Schengen area. For the officer, it's like playing a very nerdy guess your visa limit game, except the computer already knows the answer. So when they ask, how long are you staying? What they really want is a simple, believable time frame that matches those rules. Nail that, and you've cleared one of the biggest hurdles. Next comes a part that feels a lot more personal: why you're here in the first place. If you're not careful with that one, you can end up spending half your day in a conversation that never seems to end. You've made it through how long are you staying, and then comes the question that can change the whole mood at the desk. What's the purpose of your trip? By this point, they know how long you're staying and roughly where you came from. Now they're trying to put you in a clear box in their head. Tourist, family visit, short-term business, study, something else. The fewer question marks in that box, the faster you move on. The word that causes the most drama here is work. Picture this. You're entering Australia and you say you're there for work. Be ready for the follow-up barrage. What exactly do you do? Who are you meeting? Why does this have to happen in person instead of online? None of that means you've done something wrong. It's just how seriously some countries treat anything that sounds like you might be doing local labor or taking a job. So how do you answer without lying, but also without turning it into a cross-exam? It's safer to keep your reply brief, but specific enough to match your visa type. If you're on a tourist visa, keep it plain. I'm here on vacation. If you're there for business, I'm attending a conference in Chicago. That answer signals. Your documents match your story. And if your trip has more than one purpose, say you're staying with relatives and also planning to sightsee lead with the main reason that actually matches your visa. The side plans can stay in the background. That way your story feels simple and it lines up neatly with whatever is already in their system. Treat this question as a quick reality check. When your words line up with your paperwork, things usually flow straight to the next step, where officers turn their attention from your trip to your background. Few things feel more awkward than explaining your job to a stranger in a uniform who barely looks up from a screen. But when they ask, "What do you do for work?" here's what they're trying to answer, 2 quiet questions in their head. Do you have a way to pay for this trip? And what kind of life is waiting for you back home? You don't need a big polished speech for that. To the point answers work best. I'm a teacher. I work in marketing. I'm a student. That's enough for them to form a picture. People get into trouble when they start adding extra commentary. I just left my job, but I'm looking for something new. Now they're wondering if this really is a visit, or the first step in a move. But what if you are temporarily out of work? Here's a way to be honest and still sound like you have your life together. I finished a project and I'm taking a short break before the next one. Aside, students can say, I'm studying economics, or I'm in my final year of engineering. Freelancers might mention their field, I design websites, or I do content strategy. As for travelers who are already retired, you don't have to recite your entire career. I'm retired. For most older travelers with a return ticket, that answer alone drops you into one of the lowest risk categories. You're clearly not there to compete for local jobs. And yes, unconventional jobs still count. I once told a US officer, straight-faced, "I'm a YouTuber." He gave me a look straight out of a sitcom and asked, "Is that stable?" One sentence about it being my full-time income was enough. Once it fit into his mental picture of real job, he moved on. Sometimes this question comes with a small add-on. Do you have sufficient funds for your stay? They want to know you won't need to work illegally or rely on the state. Having proof like a credit card, a prepaid hotel booking, or a recent bank statement shows you planned ahead, even if they never ask to see it. You're not trying to impress anyone at the border. You're making your story coherent, some kind of work, study, retirement, or a clear break between projects, plus a trip with an obvious endpoint. Once they're comfortable that you have something solid waiting at home, the next question usually shifts from who you are to who you're with, and that's where things can get surprisingly intense if you're not traveling alone. This is the moment the interview stops being about you and starts pulling in everyone around you. Are you traveling alone? Is how an officer checks who's actually tied to your trip and whether what you say matches what's on the booking in front of them. For example, if your ticket was booked together with someone else's name, they'll expect to hear that person mentioned. Or if you've checked in as a group but arrived separately, they may ask about it to make sure everything adds up, no secret plus ones hiding in baggage claim. To avoid that panic moment, here's the smart way to answer it. If you're traveling by yourself, a short reply works perfectly. Yes, I'm traveling alone. Say it in a steady, normal tone. Solo travelers get this question all the time. It's not a red flag by itself. If you're with others, keep it tight and specific. I'm traveling with my sister. She's right behind me in line. Or, I'm with my husband and our 2 kids. No family saga, no relationship drama, who they are, and how they relate to you. Now let's talk about the part that stresses people out most, traveling with kids. One viewer told me that when she landed in Sydney, Australian immigration officers briefly separated from her preteen daughter at the border because the system thought the child was already in the country. Officers treated it like a possible kidnapping case before realizing it was a database error. They apologized and tried to make up for it with lounge access, but the scare stuck with her for years. So if you're traveling with children, especially if they have a different last name, or one parent isn't present, think one step ahead. Bring whatever documents are common for your route, like a birth certificate or a letter from the other parent, and prep your kids so they're not frozen if someone in uniform asks, "Who are you traveling with? And where are you going?" The same prepare ahead rule applies in some cultural contexts too. In parts of South Asia or the Middle East, a woman traveling alone may also hear questions like, "Who is meeting you?" or "Where is your husband?" A short, steady answer usually closes that loop quickly. Before we move on to the next question, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and share this with the friend you travel with most, so the 2 of you can walk up to that desk a lot more relaxed next time. Because the very next question, "Do you have any family here?" is where a lot of completely normal visitors accidentally make themselves look like potential long-term immigrants without even realizing it. Do you have any family here? Is one of those questions that instantly messes with your head. You want to be honest, but you also don't want to say something that suddenly makes you sound like you're planning to stay forever. From the officer side, family is just a way to measure how strongly you're connected to this country. It doesn't automatically count against you, but a tangled, rambling answer can turn a quick check into a longer chat. If your answer is no, say so and move on. No need for side comments about having no one waiting. You're not auditioning for a soap opera, you're answering a formality. The mental gymnastics really start when the answer is yes. You've got an aunt, a cousin, a sibling in that country, and suddenly you're wondering how much to share. Here's the sweet spot. Enough detail to sound real and grounded, not so much that it turns into a family newsletter. Just respond with the essentials. Yes, my cousin lives in Toronto, or my sister lives in San Francisco. I'm staying with her for a week. Some travelers start talking too much. Well, my cousin's husband's brother moved here first, then his parents came over, and we might stay longer if. At that point, the conversation stops feeling like a visit and start sounding like a soft launch relocation. If you're there for a specific event that can actually make your answer stronger, not weaker, yes, my aunt lives here. I'm staying with her for 5 days for my niece's graduation. Then I fly back on Monday. In one line, you've given them a real reason to be there, a place to sleep, and a built-in end date. That's exactly the kind of story that sits comfortably next to your return ticket in their system. The key with this question isn't to hide your relatives. It's to avoid wandering into open-ended territory. Who they are, roughly where they are, and how your visit fits into a trip that clearly ends, that's all you need. The next logical thing they often ask is whether this is your first time dealing with their border at all, because your past entries and exits can say just as much as whatever you tell them today. You're standing at the desk almost through the checklist, and then comes, "Have you been here before?" This is where a lot of people sabotage themselves. Your brain starts rewinding. Was it 2018 or 2019? Was that the wedding trip or the work trip? Did I use my old passport or the new one? And the harder you dig for dates, the more tense you look. Here's what actually matters. They already see your travel history on their screen. Entries, exits, old visas, it's all laid out in a neat little timeline. They're not grading your memory. They're checking whether what you say lives in the same rough time frame as what they see. If this is your first time, no, this is my first time. You can even keep it light if it fits your style. No, first visit, I'm brand new here. If you've been before, you still don't need laser accurate dates. Yes, I was here about 2 years ago. Or, yes, I came once on a work trip. No one expects you to remember the exact day of a stamp buried in your old passport. As long as your answer sounds reasonable next to their records, this question is over in seconds. Trying to replay your entire travel history out loud usually makes you sound tangled, not more trustworthy. If you've ever been asked this and completely blanked on the year, tell me in the comments that happens way more than you'd think. Up to this point, it might feel like casual chit-chat with a badge. But the next question is where tired travelers really start slipping up with one careless no. This is the line that can quietly turn a smooth arrival into a marathon of questions. Do you have anything to declare? By the time you reach this point, most people are in just let me out of here mode. You see the exit doors, your brain hits autopilot. That's when a lot of travelers fire off a quick no without actually thinking about what they're bringing into the country. The funny part is, customs usually aren't hunting for movie-style contraband. Most of the time, they care about very normal things: medicine, food, high-value jewelry or electronics, and larger amounts of cash. Their job is to protect farms and wildlife, keep dangerous or fake meds out, and make sure big purchases are properly declared. That's why older travelers with pill organizers, blood pressure meds, or medical devices are usually fine as long as it's clearly for personal use and, where required, declared. The catch is that certain items, especially food and plants, can trigger extra checks even when your intentions are totally innocent. And the more it looks like something was discovered by surprise, the messier it tends to get. So how do you handle this question without turning it into a drama? Take a breath and run a quick mental scan. Anything new and expensive? Any meds or medical gear? Any food or homemade treats that might fall under special rules? If you're not sure, don't be afraid to say so and let them guide you. I have prescription medication and some sealed snacks for personal use. Do those need to be declared? That one line keeps you in the proactive and transparent category, not the said no and then got caught category. People who speak up and ask rarely have the worst day at customs. The real problems usually start with a confident no and a surprise discovery. And if you think that's the end of the tough questions, the next one has a nasty habit of exposing who actually planned their trip and who was hoping to improvise everything at the border. The moment you hear, "Where will you be staying?" the tone shifts a little. Up to now, you've been talking about the past and big picture plans. This one is very simple and very real. Where are you actually sleeping tonight? For the officer, your accommodation is the anchor of your whole story. In their mind, it's a bit like opening the front door of their own house. People who can answer right away usually have their itinerary sorted, while vague replies tend to stretch the moment longer than it should. Picture this. Someone says, somewhere downtown, maybe a hotel near the river. That kind of answer is enough to make them keep digging. Their job is repetitive and boring. When something doesn't quite line up in their mental picture, they ask more questions until it does. The version that keeps things smooth sounds more like, I'm staying at the Pacific Hotel in Manhattan. Staying with relatives or friends, mention, I'm staying with my cousin in Toronto for 5 nights. Having your accommodation details ready keeps things moving. But what if your trip isn't a simple one city, one hotel situation? Just start with the first solid stop. I'll be on the Coral Princess cruise out of Miami, then 1 night in a hotel near the port after we dock. When the answer to that feels solid, the next step is almost automatic. Some officers will want to see the bigger picture on paper or on your screen. That's when you hear the follow-up that catches a lot of people off guard. In some cases, an officer will ask to see your itinerary if your answer starts sounding a little memorized. They might say things like, which cities are you visiting? Or do you have your itinerary or hotel details? It can feel nosy, but really it's a simple test. Does the story on your lips match the story in your bookings? Let me tell you a story I watched at LAX. An officer asked the passenger in front of me a very basic question. Where are you going? Instead of answering, the guy snapped. That's none of your business. The officer tried again, and he launched into a speech about privacy and freedom. Less than a minute later, he was being walked away, and everyone else in line was quietly thinking, yeah, I do not want my trip to start like that. The immigration desk is the worst place to turn a simple question about your plans into an argument. When they ask to see your itinerary, they're not asking for your diary. They're checking that your flights, hotels, and dates match what you've already told them. So how do you make this easy and even a little bit impressive? Here's a simple fix I use myself. Before the trip, take a screenshot of your hotel or Airbnb confirmations, save them into a single offline PDF. Airport Wi-Fi has a special talent for dying the second you need to open your email, and nobody enjoys watching you scroll through a spinning loading icon while the line grows behind you. You don't need a thick paper folder unless you like that. You're opening the exact same thing you'd show at hotel check-in. Are you the type who prints everything and keeps it in a folder? Or do you trust your phone with your entire travel life? Share your system in the comments. Someone else might learn from you on their next trip. Get that habit in place now, because the next question is where officers stop asking about where you're sleeping and start asking whether you're actually leaving. Right after checking your itinerary, the officer usually moves to the next big question. Can I see your return ticket or onward travel? This is the moment they check one simple thing in their head. Is this trip going to end when it's supposed to? For most short trips with a round-trip ticket, this part is easy. Your flight home is booked, the date sits comfortably inside your allowed stay, and it matches what you've been saying at the desk. You pull it up, they see an exit, and everyone moves on. Now let's talk about the trickier version. Maybe you're not flying straight home. You're hopping to another country, doing a long loop, or stringing together multiple regions. In those cases, a later flight or confirmed onward booking can work as well, as long as it shows you're wrapping up this leg of the journey before your time is up. Just be careful if you plan to use a bus or train ticket as proof of onward travel. Some countries don't treat that as enough to get you past the counter. The hardest case is the one a lot of long-term travelers fall into. You could legally stay for a long time without a visa, and you honestly haven't decided when to leave yet. In your head, I'm not sure, I'll figure it out later, sounds open and flexible. At the border, it sounds like you walked in with no finish line. That's exactly the kind of answer that makes an officer lean back and start wondering what you're really planning. Here's where a small bit of strategy goes a long way. Pick a realistic departure date that sits comfortably inside your allowed stay, book something you can move or cancel, and build your plan around that. I've got a simple suggestion here. I often use services like Best Onward Ticket. In situations like this, they create a real, time-limited flight reservation in your name that you can show as proof you're leaving. The key is to make sure whatever you show is genuine and verifiable. If an officer types in that booking reference, it should actually exist. If you're not sure how to use an onward ticket or flexible booking in your specific case, drop a comment. I'm happy to walk you through it. By the time this question is over, you've answered 3 big things without saying them out loud. You know why you're here, where you're staying, and how you're getting out. You might feel like you've cleared the big hurdles and you're almost out of there. But in some countries, there's still one last layer. They want to know whether you've actually prepared for the worst case scenario. It's the question that doesn't show up on every trip, but when it does, it quietly separates the casual traveler from the "I've thought this through" crowd. In some parts of the world, this isn't optional at all. For Schengen visas, you can be required to have medical coverage of at least 30,000 euros before they even give you the visa sticker. Countries like Cuba or Saudi Arabia may ask to see valid travel insurance when you arrive. The idea is simple. If you get sick or hurt, you're not stuck in their system with no way to pay. And travel insurance really is that boring little document that turns into a superhero the moment your luck flips. But do you know how much that insurance can actually rescue your trip? A delayed flight turns into a covered hotel night. Food poisoning becomes a clinic visit instead of a 4-figure bill on your credit card. Lost luggage? Frustrating, yes, but reimbursed, not a full wardrobe emergency. Imagine this happening to you. It's day 2 of your trip. You rent a scooter, the ocean's glimmering, the road's clear, and 5 minutes later, you're on the pavement, staring at an $800 bill for an X-ray, cash only. At that moment, nah, I'll be fine, stops sounding brave and starts sounding very expensive. Experienced travelers know that preparation is what separates a great trip from a stressful one. Even if no one asks for proof at immigration, having insurance says something important you've planned responsibly, so your adventure stays exciting, not take your savings down with it. So when you're getting ready for an international trip, don't think of a passport ticket hotel. Quietly add one more thing to that list. Proof that if the worst day hits, you already have a plan. All those questions at the border really boil down to a few things. Who you are, why you're here, where you're staying, when you're leaving, and whether you can handle trouble if it shows up. Under bright airport lights, it can feel personal, but for the officer, it's just routine, and for you, it's a lot easier when you've already thought through your answers and know exactly where your documents are. If you've got an international trip coming up, save this video and give it a quick rewatch before you fly. 2 minutes of prep in your living room can make that immigration desk feel like a simple formality instead of a pop quiz. Now, tell me in the comments, what's the weirdest or toughest question you've been asked at immigration or customs, and where was it? If this made you feel even a bit more confident about that line, hit like, subscribe, and share it with a friend who's about to travel.